With a booming economy and a low crime rate, this should be a great time to be mayor of Boston. But Marty Walsh isn't having much fun these days. Here he is a couple of weeks ago.
Do you think it's appropriate to create any distance at all between yourself and unions with the federal program?
No, absolutely not.
Everywhere Mayor Walsh goes, he gets peppered with questions like that. The latest and biggest blow to his administration came last week when Ken Brissett, he's a top-ranking advisor on tourism, was indicted for allegedly strong-arming sponsors of a music festival and using union laborers, going as far as threatening to withhold permits.
The one thing that I know, I've done no wrongdoing in this investigation or any investigation that's been talked about. I would never instruct an employee of the city of Boston to do something that's inappropriate or illegal.
But here's part of the problem for the mayor. This is now the third issue involving him or his administration and potential wrongdoing on behalf of union interests. There are reports he was heard on a wiretap warning a developer about using non-union workers before he became mayor, by the way. He was then head of the Boston Building Trades. Brissett is also mentioned for threatening the producers of the show Top Chef about using non-union workers, but he was not criminally charged there. The production ultimately moved out of town. So with this backdrop, can the mayor effectively lead the city, and will he face legal trouble ahead? Joining me are former federal judge Nancy Gertner. Judge Gertner, good to see you.
Nice to be
Jack
here.
Sullivan, senior investigative reporter for Commonwealth Magazine. Jack, great to see you
Thank
too.
you, Jim.
So far, Nancy Gertner, nothing at all connecting Walsh to this indictment, but there are some ominous things said in this indictment that should cause the mayor to worry, aren't there?
Well, there are ominous things only if first Brissett is guilty. So let's sort of back off, right? We bake union participation into the Zoning Board of Appeals, into the BRA, union representatives, and then we're shocked that they advocate for unions. So that's one point.
That's not what he's charged. He's charged with saying that you're not getting your permits unless you hire union labor. That's different from advocacy.
The second question is whether or not he had any authority to do that. I mean, the role that he plays is essentially coordinating. Did he have any authority to even stop it? And the third is, you know, usually extortion comes when someone gets money. Here, what he's doing is advocating for a union interest. No different, I might add, than when Menino, then Mayor Menino, wrote to Chick-fil-A saying, we'd rather you not come to Boston because you're opposed to gay marriage.
But well, you would agree it is totally different to advocate for union workers and to say you will not get permits for your event unless you hire union workers. You agree that the latter would cross the line if it were true, unlike the former.
Well, but I'm actually not going to agree to that because I think it's a continuum. One is saying that people ought to, you ought to hire union people. The other is, I predict you're going to have a hard time.
No, I predict. The accusation is he said you're not getting your permits unless you hire union workers, and they didn't get them until 3 or 4 days before when they did.
But the question is whether he had any authority to do what they alleged that he said.
Let me ask you one more thing before I bring Jack into this. The ominous thing I was talking about particularly, they mentioned in the indictment, again with no name, there's another city employee that pressured Boston Calling into hiring union people like Brissett did. Why isn't that person named? And the ominous part to me is the question is how high up or not is that man or woman? Why don't they name that person?
Well, so very interesting. First is a question of whether it's above Brissett or below Brissett. Of
course.
Because in fact, permits come from other agencies and not from the Office of
But regardless,
Tourism.
why didn't the U.S. Attorney name this person?
That's very interesting. I wonder whether one reason is you want to start the speculation rolling. You want people to worry that they're in it. There could be a legitimate reason, and the legitimate reason is that we have informers that we want to, whose identity we want to protect. The less legitimate reason is that these cases are created by pressure, and the pressure comes from leaks and hinting darkly that more is involved.
Jack Sullivan, when you were at the Herald, you were in charge. Part of your jurisdiction was City Hall. You were executive city editor. What kind of impact does something? Let's assume Marty Walsh has nothing to do with this, no legal or other liability. What kind of political impact does a pending investigation like this have?
I think that it can paralyze the entire administration. I mean, you have people talking about it. Who's talking to who? What did you hear? Who's getting called before the grand jury? Who's getting letters as far as testimony goes? Things like that. And I think, with all due respect to Judge Gertner, I think that it does go beyond Mr. Brissett as well. Ken Brissett does not have a union background. The union background comes from Mayor Walsh and his closest aides. So you have to wonder, if he didn't have these connections to the union, where is he getting his marching orders? And that's what's starting to go around the City Hall as well.
See, Judge Gertner, that's the other ominous thing I was going to say, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but off what Jack just said, the indictment mentions that Boston Coaling in the year before, when it was under Tom Menino, non-union people working there. And then there's a line, quote, in January 2014, the administration of the city of Boston changed. Am I reading too much in that? Not from the perspective of fact, because who knows, but from the perspective of the U.S. attorney trying to send a message. Things change as soon as that union guy, Marty Walsh, took over.
That's what I'm saying, hinting darkly that there's something wrong here. And but getting back to Jack's point, an administration comes in with union ties. We put, as I said, we put union representatives because we want we put Chamber of Commerce representatives, we put union representatives, and then we're surprised when they advocate for the union. Now, there are limits to advocacy, for sure, right? You can't be pushing people around in service of a particular union, but to advocate for union interests, what are the limitations there? I want to look at it from the other perspective.
You know, what are the rumors? But, there was great fear when he beat John Connolly. This is a union guy. He's going to be in the pocket of the unions. But then he negotiated a firefighter's contract that even the most critical observer, this being Marty Walsh, thought was incredibly fair and balanced, to coin a phrase. He hasn't shown a tremendous predilection for being in the pockets of organized labor any more than any Democratic mayor is in Massachusetts, has he?
I'm not sure that one or two contract negotiations, has exonerated him from the.
Well, I'm not saying he does, but there's no evidence to the contrary.
No,
yet, is there?
but the other part of it too is that it casts a pall because that's what he came in with. There was this perception, and as Judge Gertner says, there's nothing wrong with advocacy, but at what point does advocacy go into extortion?
But there's no evidence so far that he has anything to do more than advocacy.
No, but advocacy is the political side of it. That's what voters are worried about. The extortion is the criminal side of it.
Right, but that line is actually a very difficult line to draw here. I mean, advocacy was what he was elected to do. The public knew that he was a union
public.
representative.
He wasn't elected to advocate for unions. He was elected to advocate for the public.
It's true, but everyone knew, just as a Chamber of Commerce guy who was the mayor, you knew that what you're getting was someone whose interests were in this direction.
But where's his lawyer? The thing that the Boston Globe editorial said, and I agree with this completely, one of the things he can do to show how transparent he is, the Globe has requested documents if there's any exchange between the U.S. Attorney's Office and his. He's refused to release them, even though the state supervisor of record says you have no defense, essentially. Secondly, he said he didn't appear before a grand jury in this strong-arming thing. He's refused to say if he's appeared before any other grand juries, including the Top Chef thing. Answer the questions. Be transparent. Why isn't he doing that? Isn't that the best response to this hanging thing here?
Well, I mean, my response when I was a defense lawyer was always that you should talk directly to the press, that you should keep the rumor mill from happening. On the other hand, having him answer questions asked by the prosecutor means you're only answering questions asked by one side. I mean, talking about the documents that he turned over are only the documents that they found to be incriminating. So if he's going to talk, he has to talk about everything.
Why can't he just agree with the Globe document request? Here's the documents they requested. Here's the communication back and forth. Here it is. And tell us if you appeared in front of a grand jury. You don't have to tell us what you said. Did you or didn't you?
Let me ask you a question. Do you actually think that if he agreed that he appeared before a grand jury, that the next question wouldn't be, what did you say?
Well, I'm sure it would be, and I'm sure he said that's all I can say now. I'm trying to be as transparent as I can so I don't interfere with the work of the grand jury.
But if you're dealing with a one-sided investigation, which is all a grand jury ever is, how much do you have to say in order to counter that one side? I think it is difficult. I do think that he should say more because, as I said, in our conversation, this is not an open and shut indictment. This is an open and shut issue. And the public should know that there's a continuum here. And the question is, where is he on that, or someone in his administration?
So that's the legal thing about what politically in 15
thing.
seconds. I'm serious. What's the political, what should he be doing on the political front?
I agree that I think he should talk about it more. I think he should be more open. The problem with that, and here's where I do agree with Judge Gertner, there is nothing that prevents a witness before a grand jury to talk about what he was asked and what he said before a grand jury.
He won't even say if he showed up in front of a grand jury.
That's the problem. I mean, that is, I think, what he should say is, yes, I did, or no, I didn't, and then that's all.
Nancy Gertner, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you
Judge,
again.
It's a pleasure. Jack, thank you so
Jim.
much. Good to see you both.